She was sold to a mountain man, the shocking punishment her stepfather gave for getting pregnant. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a blood-red glow across the misty mountains. Whispers in the small town of Cedar Creek turned into frantic murmurs as the tale of Lila May spread like wildfire. Her stepfather, the notorious Clayton Hargrave, had a reputation for harsh discipline. But no one could have imagined this. When she returned home, eyes filled with tears and shame, he made a decision that would shatter the very fabric of their lives. He sold her to a mountain man, a rugged hermit who had lived alone for years, feared by many and known for his dark secrets. The townsfolk gasped at the horror of it all, unable to pull their eyes away. Lila's heart raced as she thought back on the last few days. A teenage crush had spiraled out of control, leaving her pregnant and scared. She had hoped for understanding, a soft word, maybe even a hug. Instead, the harsh reality of her stepfather's wrath slapped her across the face. "You're not my daughter anymore," he had screamed, his voice trembling with rage. The scars of his words cut deeper than her physical pain. They echoed in her mind, a constant reminder that she was now property, traded away like cattle. As she was led to the edge of town, the air hung thick with fear. The stares from her neighbors burned into her skin. Lila could see the disbelief in their eyes mixed with something darker: excitement. Curiosity. Was she really the subject of their gossip? Whispers floated around like smog, and she could hardly breathe. What had she done to deserve this fate? Finally, they reached the creaky wooden cabin, nestled among twisted pines and jagged rocks. It looked dark and foreboding, the perfect prison. The mountain man's unsettling silhouette loomed in the doorway. He was as wild as the terrain surrounding him: wild hair, a beard full of secrets, and eyes like icy slits that seemed to see right through her. Lila's breath hitched, her pulse racing like a jackrabbit on the run. What would happen to her now? Would he lock her up? Make her his slave? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Lila stood there, paralyzed, she realized the gravity of the moment. Could she escape? What if he hurt her? Panic surged through her veins, like fire racing through dry brush. She thought about her mother who had passed years prior, wishing she could call on her spirit just once for guidance. The world spun around her, the trees rustled ominously, and Lila's fate seemed sealed in that dreadful instant. Would anyone come looking for her? Or was she truly lost in this nightmare? The door creaked open, revealing the mountain man's face, its weathered lines telling tales of hardship and isolation. His gaze pierced through Lila, and dread washed over her. There was an intensity there she couldn't quite place, almost hungry, like a predator sizing up its prey. She gulped, her throat dry and tight. This was not a man who would show mercy. "Get in," he said, his voice low and gravelly as the earth itself. Lila stumbled forward, legs trembling as she crossed the threshold. The cabin's interior was dim, save for a single flickering oil lamp that threw eerie shadows against the rough logs and clutter strewn about. A dusty old table, mismatched chairs, and shelves filled with odd trinkets cluttered the small space. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, a world away from everything she had known. Her heart raced as the door slammed shut behind her, echoing in the silence. She turned to face him, a sense of icy realization gripping her. "Please, just let me go," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. He tilted his head, revealing a flicker of surprise in his cold eyes. "Go? Why would I do that?" "Because I'm not a prisoner," she stammered, her cheeks burning. "I'm just a girl who made a mistake." He stepped closer, towering over her with an uneasy calm. "A mistake? A mistake like what? Getting pregnant? Or a mistake like trusting that monster you call a father?" His words dripped with disdain, the tension in the room thickened like fog, stifling her breaths. Everything about him screamed danger, yet there was a flicker of something else. Could it be sympathy? Shame? Lila couldn't tell. She felt like a moth drawn to a flame, wanting to understand but terrified of the burn. I didn't ask for this. Lila's voice broke. I just wanted to be loved. The mountain man paused, as if her words sparked some recognition. Love, he echoed, almost to himself, bitterness lacing his tone. Love doesn't exist in this world, not for people like us. He moved away, toying with a rusted knife that lay on the table, the blade glinting in the dim light. Lila's pulse quickened at the sight. Panic flooded her again as she scanned the room for a way out. But fear was soon overtaken by curiosity when he finally turned to her, his eyes hinting at a different emotion. You think you're a burden? You think you're the only one with a wall around your heart? You have no idea. Lila raised her chin, defiance bubbling within. Maybe I don't, but I want to let you treat me like I'm nothing. I'm a person. His chuckle was low and haunting. A person? Out here in the wild, you're just meat. And meat has its purpose. Lila felt her stomach twist. She had to get out. But deep inside, something stirred, a fear that went beyond just physical danger. It was the fear of what she might discover about herself and this man. What was hidden beneath his hardened exterior? But as she was about to challenge him again, a loud crash resonated from outside, shaking the cabin to its core. Lila jumped, her heart racing anew. What was that? Just as she opened her mouth to ask, he turned sharply, eyes narrowing. Stay here. The authority in his voice was frightening and mesmerizing. With that, he swung the door open, leaving Lila alone in the shadows, uncertainty clawing at her. She could hear muffled voices and growling in the distance. What was out there? Instinct told her to run. But just as she took a step forward, she realized there was something more lurking in the darkness, something that would change everything. What awaited Lila outside that door? Was it the freedom she'd yearned for, or an even greater danger? Lila stood frozen in the cabin, heart pounding against her ribs like a wild animal trapped in a cage. The door swung wide, revealing the chaotic world outside, a bittersweet invitation to freedom mixed with the scent of fear. The shadows danced, and the cacophony of growls and gruff voices sent shivers crawling up her spine. You shouldn't have followed me, old fool. A voice cut through the noise, raspy and sharp. It was the mountain man's tone, but tinged with anger, a world apart from the quiet menace he had shown her. Heart racing, Lila glanced towards the open door. Should she risk it? A chance to escape was tugging at her, a thread through the suffocating gloom. But as she peered outside, what she saw made her breath catch. A group of rough-looking men surrounded the cabin. Their silhouettes were framed against the dim light of the trees. They were armed, some carrying crude weapons and others with knives strapped to their waists. She recognized the wild energy of a pack, one that thrived on danger and violence. Lila jerked back, her mind racing. Were they with him? Were they here to help him or to harm her? Her own father's warnings echoed in her ears, trust no one. Out there, it's every man for himself. Suddenly, a crushing crash echoed as one of the men slammed a fist against the doorframe. You think you can hide forever, you mountain hermit? There was a mixture of rage and mockery, enough to force her breath to hitch. Go away. The mountain man's voice rang back, low and feral. What do you want? Your gold, and that girl you're keeping. Hand her over, and we'll leave you in peace. The words hit Lila like a slap. They'd come for her. The bitter reality that she was nothing more than a pawn, a bargaining chip, settled over her, heavy and suffocating. Get in or get out. The blowback of his command was filled with an intensity that was almost terrifying. Yet, it resonated with something deep inside her. For once, she felt the force of his power against the encroaching threat. There was a roar from one of the men, a call to action. You're outnumbered. You think you can take on all of us? The mountain man stepped back into the cabin, his presence imposing. With a glance over his shoulder, he caught Lila staring, wide-eyed and breathless. You need to decide now. Trust me or trust them. The uncertainty wrapped around her like a suffocating cloak. Was there a choice? Was trusting him any better than falling into their hands? Her instincts screamed to bolt for the door, to run into the wild, to survive on her own. But something stopped her. She needed to know what lay behind that resolute facade. Before she could voice her thoughts, he moved with a sudden ferocity, grabbing a makeshift spear from the wall. Stay back! He shouted, rushing toward the door, preparing for battle. Lila's heart raced, torn between her instincts to flee and her desire to untangle the threads of the man before her. Would he protect her, or would joining him seal her fate? As the growls outside morphed into a rhythmic pounding against the door, she understood something vital. She had to make a choice. What if trusting him was the missing piece she needed to escape the darkness of her past? When she took a step forward, opening her mouth to speak, a piercing scream erupted through the chaos, one that didn't belong to either of the men. What was happening outside that door? Was it the opportunity for Lila to reclaim her life or the start of something darker still? Lila's heart dropped, the scream clawing its way under her skin. It was high-pitched and desperate, slicing through the darkness like a knife. A part of her wanted to rush to the door, to bolt outside and see who needed help, but another part, the one rooted in sheer survival, held her firmly in place. That scream was a warning, a signal that chaos had seeped from the surrounding woods into the heart of the cabin. The mountain man's gaze flickered back to her, face etched with lines of concentration. He raised the spear, his grip unwavering, ready to confront whatever devilry lurked beyond the door. Lila, he said, voice taut. You need to hide. Now. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. But as another thud echoed on the door, she felt fear coil tightly around her throat. She bolted to the corner of the cabin, slipping behind a tattered old chair. The wood creaked just enough to feel like a warning bell, as she desperately tried to still her breathing, drowning out the turmoil just outside. Let her go. A voice roared, commanding and fierce. She's not any good to you dead. A sickening feeling twisted in her stomach. Who was being threatened now? Her eyes darted to a sliver of the world beyond the door. The towering silhouettes of the men formed a horrific arena, a tableau of grim faces lit by the flickering glow of firelight. Then it happened. In the thick tension of the moment, a roar burst from one of the attackers, blending with sounds of a scuffle, metal clashing against metal. The mountain man lunged, the spear cutting through the air like a whisper of fate. Lila couldn't see it clearly from her hidden place, but the straining sounds of a man in pain filled the air, scraping against the calm of the woods that seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the chaos, Lila heard blood-curdling cries, escalating into frenzied shouts. They were fighting. They were willing to kill for her. But why? What did she mean to them? Then, amidst the chaos, she heard a familiar voice rise above the noise. Lila. It was sweet but tinged with desperation. Lila, please. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. It was Maisie. Her sister had found her. But why had she come alone? A bitter twist of anxiety churned inside her. Had she been foolish enough to come without any protection, following Lila's trail into this nightmare? Before Lila could understand anything further, the door blasted open with a malicious crack. One of the armed men was swept into the cabin in a whirlwind of chaos, collapsing against furniture. His presence disrupted the room's fragile safety, the darkness pooling dangerously around them. Get behind me. The mountain man barked, stepping in front of her like a shield. His eyes were wild, reflecting the firelight as he stomped forward, the spear raised. Lila clutched the edge of the chair, heart racing, mind spinning. Maisie's voice was lost to the mayhem outside, a ghost caught in a trap. The situation had spiraled beyond any control she could imagine, and the cabin felt smaller, the shadows more alive, as if they were closing in around her. Help us, Lila. Her sister's voice rang out again, strained and terrified, echoing from the chaos outside. Now it was all or nothing. Taking a shaky breath, Lila pushed away the doubts. There was no time left. She had to make a choice. Would she thrust herself forward into the fray with the mountain man, or would she remain caged by fear, enslaved by the choices of others? The next clash of metal sounded, and the choice crystallized. If she didn't act now, she might lose Maisie forever. Lila surged forward, determination hardening her resolve. But what awaited her in the growing shadows of the forest? Was it salvation or double the danger? Lila stumbled from her hiding place, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She didn't have time to think, only time to act. The mountain man moved like a shadow, every muscle coiled and ready. Through the doorway, chaos erupted. Maisie! She screamed, the name tearing from her throat like a lifeline. The violent thrashing continued, punctuated by sharp gasps of pain. Just as she darted to the door, the mountain man's arm shot out to catch her, fierce and unyielding. Stay back! He growled, his eyes darting to the doorway just as another figure stumbled in. A blur of movement, another attacker, his face twisted with rage. Lila could barely take it in before the mountain man swung his spear. The weapon found its target with a sickening thud. For a moment, everything froze, only the whir of blood through veins mattered. Then the man crumpled to the floor, body thudding heavily against the wooden planks. Go! The mountain man bellowed, voice cracking the tension. I'll hold them off. Panic surged in Lila. She couldn't leave him. But the words of her sister echoed in her mind. Help us, Lila. Grim determination ignited her fear. She couldn't just stand there. With a push of adrenaline, she dashed forward, barely seeing the figure of another man lurking behind the wreckage of the doorframe. He lunged at her, fists swinging. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as she ducked to the side. The mountain man lunged again, knocking the attacker to the ground, leaving a gap wide enough for Lila to escape. Run! He shouted, urgency woven into his tone. Maisie! She cried again, urgency filling her lungs. She barreled out of the cabin, squinting against the firelight that flickered like a heartbeat outside. The scene was pure devastation. Figures clashed in a chaotic dance of survival, all flashes of skin and brutal intent. Her sister's screams cut through the consternation, igniting a firestorm in Lila's chest. She sprinted toward the sound, every racing beat promising hope mingled with horror. Maisie! She scanned the darkened forest, scanning for movement, desperate to find her sister amongst the chaos. Then she saw her, a dark lump, face down in the dirt. Maisie! Lila surged forward, fear lending wings to her feet. She knelt at her sister's side, shaking her violently. Wake up! Please! Maisie stirred, a whimper escaping her lips. Lila? Yes, it's me. I'm here. Relief crashed over Lila, but it quickly twisted into anxiety as she glanced around. The fight raged on behind her, the mountain man battling fiercely against the odds, yet shadows continued to swell like living nightmares. I thought you were. Maisie's voice broke, eyes wide with fear. We need to go. Now. Lila dragged her sister to her feet, panic fueling her steps. Then came the sinister sound of boots creaking on dry leaves. The men were regrouping. As they staggered toward the cabin, Lila felt a cold panic close around her heart. How many were coming? She could see shadows lurking, menacing forms dancing in the low light. Together. Stick close. Don't look back. Lila guided her sister, forcing her legs to push through the fear, but in that critical moment, as she turned to check behind them, she caught a glimpse of the mountain man, spear swinging, but then he was knocked off balance, slipping dangerously into the abyss of combat. Lila! He yelled, voice trembling, desperation cracking through the anger. Her heart broke. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her. Did she abandon him when he fought for her? Or could she rescue them both if there was still time? It struck her then there was only one thing she could do. Get on my back. She yelled at Maisie, adrenaline igniting courage in her voice. Together they pushed through the thickening woods, but forward into what? The echoes of the night, the screams, the blood, they all coiled tightly in the air. And behind them, it felt like a darkness was rising, hungry for their escape, but shadowy figures emerged ahead, blocking their path. Lila froze, the chill curling around her spine. What now? Would she face the mountain men riding after them, or the spectral nightmares waiting for them in the shadows? The forest loomed ahead, a treacherous maze. Would they have the strength to break free? With danger tightening around them like a vice, Lila prepared for her next move. The moment to confront or flee was slipping away. Lila's breath quickened, adrenaline pumping through her veins. There was no time, no room for doubt. The men behind them were regrouping, and the forest ahead appeared uninviting and full of secrets. Her heart raced as she scanned the new threat blocking their path, a pair of rough figures, broad-shouldered and wild-eyed, the kind of men who thrived in the chaos of the night. We can't go that way. Maisie's voice trembled, and Lila felt her sister stiffen against her back. She couldn't blame her, fear radiated from every branch, every rustling leaf. With no choice, Lila pivoted, searching for another escape. But shadows circled them, merging into a darkened haze. The mountain man couldn't hold them forever, and the thought of leaving him pierced her like a jagged splinter. Wait! She whispered urgently to Maisie, lowering her sister carefully. We need to think. Stillness enveloped them for a fleeting moment, the distant sounds of conflict fading to a dull roar. But that clarity evaporated when another howl echoed through the trees, filled with a primal rage that reverberated in Lila's chest. Keep moving. She forced herself to say. We can find shelter, just follow my lead. They navigated the dense thicket, pushing through brambles and underbrush, fingers clawing for purchase. Every snap of a twig made her flinch, a reminder that danger remained close, stalking them like hungry wolves. As they ducked low, Lila spotted a shallow cave just a few yards off the path. It could be a tragic mistake, but it also might offer them the cover they needed to regroup. Over there. She whispered, her urgency building. We have to get inside. With a hesitant nod, Maisie followed, her breath shaky against the night air. They slipped into the cave's mouth, and Lila pressed herself against the stone, listening intently as footsteps crunched closer. Hurry! She murmured, pulling her sister deeper into the dark. The walls felt cold, the dampness creeping into her bones. She squinted, trying to penetrate the darkness, each heartbeat echoing in her ears. Suddenly, voices broke the stillness. Two men had come within earshot, their low, grating tones mixing with the rustle of leaves. They went this way. We can't let them escape. Lila's heart plummeted. She was trapped, exposed. She could feel the shadows again, creeping into her mind, feeding her fear. What if they found them? What if she made the wrong turn? Maisie clutched her arm. Lila, what do we do? We can't just sit here. Shoo! She hissed, forcing her voice to lower. We wait and hope they move on. The seconds felt like hours, every heartbeat muted by the weight of the moment. The murmured voices drew closer, and Lila fought the urge to bolt. She folded her body, trying to disappear into the wall, while her pulse raced louder than the chaos outside. Then a realization struck her hard. What if their pursuers already knew the woods? What if they were playing a game of cat and mouse, waiting for them to show themselves? In that instant, she knew they had to act. Maisie, she said quietly, when I give the signal, we dart out to the left and run. As fast as you can. Yes, Lila. Maisie's whisper trembled slightly, but Lila could hear the determination in her sister's voice. The muffled voices of the men echoed outside the cave, drawing nearer. Lila could hear them discussing strategy, debating which direction to search next. With each second, the weight of the impending confrontation loomed larger. Now. She whispered, adrenaline surging. The world narrowed to that single point, the decision to dive into the unknown and hope for the best. They jumped out of hiding, racing for the opening, but as the air whipped around them, a shocking voice bellowed from behind. Stop right there. Frozen in her tracks, Lila turned instinctively, heart in her throat. The mountain man, the spear raised high, face grim with ferocity, stood at the cave entrance. He was outnumbered, an imposing figure against the oncoming storm of men, and a fresh wave of fear washed over Lila. In that instant, she faced a choice: betray the man who had fought for them or risk everything by leading her sister into chaos. Lila, go! He shouted, urgency twisting his features. The forest around them seemed to breathe. Shadows thickened at the edge of her vision, and Lila wrestled with the knowledge that danger was closing in. Would the mountain man protect them, or was it their turn to fight back? The tension snapped, and in a heartbeat, the night exploded with fury, choices hanging in the air, ready to ignite. Could they truly escape the clutches of fate that had drawn them all together in this terrible, tangled web? The roar of chaos erupted just outside the cave, a cacophony of shouts and the thuds of heavy boots on the forest floor, sending reverberations through Lila's bones. She felt her sister's grip tighten around her wrist, the warmth a stark contrast to the icy dread suffocating her thoughts. We can't go back, Lila insisted, turning her gaze from the confrontation unfolding before them. She didn't want to witness the impending violence. The mountain man stood defiant, a fortress against the onslaught, but fear clawed at her insides. We need to find another way out. Where? Maisie's voice was a whisper, trembling with despair. There's nowhere left. With every second that passed, the men's voices grew louder, a sinister symphony that sent chills down Lila's spine. Shadows shimmered in the light of the moon, flickering like lost hope. Her heart thundered in her chest, each beat a reminder of the danger that closed in around them. No. The mountain man's voice thundered through the night, a belligerent growl that drew more attention. You won't take them. His desperation pushed Lila to act, even as the fierce instinct within her screamed to remain hidden, to stay silent in the darkness. She pulled Maisie deeper into the cave, where the stone walls felt both cold and protective until the moment of truth loomed over their heads. We have to trust him. Trust him? Maisie's eyes flashed with terror. He's risking himself for us, Lila. What if then we'll help him? Lila's voice was steady, cutting through the panic. They couldn't afford to doubt now. If there was a chance, however slim, they had to take it. We can't just let them hurt him. The sounds of violence boomed, footsteps surged forward and the rustle of branches screamed danger. Lila moved to the cave's edge, peering out into the murky night. Her heart sank at the sight, not just the men, but a large figure looming behind them, muscles taut, teeth bared in a menacing grin. What are you waiting for? The man leading the charge was a familiar face, one she recognized from the hideouts where they sought refuge. Catch those girls. We need them alive. Before Lila could process the implications of those words, she felt an itch at the back of her mind, a plan knitting itself as she took a shallow breath. She reviewed her surroundings. Small stones lay scattered about, shadows lurked in every corner, but one thing held her attention, an iron rod, half buried in the damp earth. Maisie, grab that. Lila instructed, her gaze never leaving the figures outside. She reached for the rod, the cold metal heavy in her hands, but it felt solid, a lifeline. What are you going to do? Maisie's voice trembling with worry, yet edged with a hint of fierce curiosity. Distract them, Lila whispered urgently. Their fate depended on a thin shred of courage, and the mountain man had already shown them what it meant to stand your ground. I'll create a diversion. What do you need me to do? Maisie's voice had shifted from fear to resolve, her eyes glimmering in the dim light of the cave. On my signal, throw the stone into the thicket over there. It'll draw their attention, and I'll take care of the rest. The thunder of conflict outside lunged closer, thrumming like a battle drum. They could feel it, the night thickening, the air electrified with urgency. Lila's heart raced, fear slicing through the adrenaline as two men stepped into view, tempers flaring, weapons raised. "Now," she said. Maisie hurled the stone, a sharp crack that cut through the tension, and as the men fell into confusion, Lila charged forward, her grip tight on the iron rod. The moment was theirs, they had to seize it. She barely recognized the fury filling her veins, but she welcomed it. "Stay down," Lila shouted, racing out of the shadows. The sight of chaos ignited a flame of courage inside her. She swung the rod as hard as she could, aiming for the nearest man's legs, knocking him down with a satisfying thud, but the world morphed into a fray, a spiraling whirlwind of limbs and shouts. The mountain man yelled, urging her to join him, but fear raced through Lila as she staggered backward, adrenaline pulsing, choices unraveling that eye and the ricocheting chaos. She spotted Maisie slipping back into the darkness of the cave, eyes wide with fear, and Lila realized the battle wasn't only outside, it was a fight to keep her sister safe, to protect what they had left. Would they make it out together, or was this the moment where everything would shatter? Lila prepared to follow her sister into the abyss, determination set in her heart, but the night had surprises yet to come. The chaos crackled in the air, a tempest that threatened to consume Lila whole. She fought the instinct to retreat, to hide back into the chill of the cave. The battle outside swelled, voices clashing like steel. The mountain man fought valiantly, his strident shouts echoing through the shadows, turning chaos into a battle cry. Lila felt the cold iron rod slipping in her hands, her grip wavering as adrenaline surged. She could hear Maisie's soft whimpers echoing in her ears, reminding her of their shared struggle, their bond deeper than fear. Lila's heart raced with the urgency of a pulse checking the time. It wasn't just about their escape anymore, the stakes had risen, dangerously high. "Stay close," she yelled back, her voice sharp against the noise. Gathering her breath, Lila surged forward again, darting through the clamor. She weaving between the chaos around her, eyes wide, looking for a glimmer of hope in the restless dark, but hope flickered like a weakened flame, as she glimpsed the familiar face of the man leading the attack. Carl, his snarl etched with malice as he pushed through the throng. Recognition flooded Lila with dread. He knew her. Had always been one step behind. No. She gasped, spinning on her heel. But it was too late. Carl's fierce gaze locked onto her, and a cruel grin spread across his face as he bounded closer. Lila's heart stuttered. In that moment, she spotted Maisie still crouched in the cave, frozen by fear. The thought of leaving her sister struck like a dagger. Lila's breath quickened, chest tight. "Maisie." "Lila." Maisie's voice trembled, helpless. The mountain man took a brutal hit, knocked back by a punch, pain flaring across his face, a backdrop to Lila's panic. If he fell, they would have no protector. Lila hefted the iron rod once more, her mind racing through every desperate scenario. She couldn't let Carl get closer, couldn't let him reach her sister. Lila pushed forward, eyes narrowed with determination. Leave her alone. Sounding braver than she felt, she swung the rod with all her strength at Carl's direction. The man ducked just in time, and she felt the whoosh of air but not the impact. He lunged, and for a split second, the world slowed as fear surged through Lila's veins, a shattering clarity igniting her survival instinct. Carl's hand grasped her wrist, yanking her away from the cave. The grip was vice-like, burning with a chill that spiraled through her, mixing with a sense of panic. But Lila wasn't done. She twisted wildly, drawing her knee up, connecting with his gut. Carl grunted, momentarily stunned. "Run, Maisie!" Lila shouted, yanking her sister from the shadows of the cave with her other hand. Together, they stumbled back, breathless fear turning their hearts to stone. As the chaos erupted around them, anger rippled among the men, anger directed towards Lila and her sister. They were not merely collateral damage in this battle anymore, they had become the prize. The woods reverberated with the howls of violent intentions, a claustrophobic grip closing in on the girls. "Don't let them escape!" bellowed Carl, his face twisted with fury. The sudden urgency of impending danger spurred Lila. She had to get to the trees, into the embrace of the forest that had always felt alive, wild, and free. Go. Now. Lila urged, shoving Maisie forward, every fiber of her being screaming for them to run. But as they sprinted for the relative safety of the trees, a heavy presence loomed. From behind, the mountain man's voice roared above the din. Stay together. Then, the unmistakable sound of snapping branches echoed. The charge of one of Carl's men surged right toward them, a wall of chaos within moments of descending on their heels. Lila! Maisie cried, her panic palpable, the dagger-like fear pierced through her chest. With every step, they raced towards the darkness, their fears clawing at them, hot breath against the back of their necks. Would they escape the clutches of the night? The outcome felt tethered to the grip of fate. Then, just as they burst into the tree-line, something shifted in the air. A series of soft gnarls erupted. Shadows flitted between the trunks, and a low growl echoed, sending a shiver down their spines. Instinctively, Lila turned, meeting the eyes of raw, hungry animals. What lurked in the trees? Was it deliverance or doom? In that fleeting moment, they were stuck in the grips of destiny, held between what hunted them and the terror yet to come. The growl reverberated through the darkness like a death knell, freezing Lila's limbs. She and Maisie stood on the cusp of the forest, the flickering chaos of the battle fading behind them, replaced now by another type of fear, primal and raw. What is that? Maisie whispered, her voice tremulous, eyes wide. Lila's pulse thundered in her ears. I don't know, but we have to keep moving. With a quick, urgent glance around, she could feel the shadows watching, waiting. The creatures darkened the periphery, sleek bodies crouched low, muscles rippling under fur as they began to emerge from the underbrush. Wolves. Lila remembered their glinting eyes from childhood stories, monsters that prowled the woods, shadows of folklore come to life in a moment of sheer dread. But this wasn't a story, it was a nightmare. Then, a piercing howl cut through the night, a call to action from the pack. Suddenly, instinct kicked in, and Lila turned, grabbing Maisie's wrist. Run! They dashed deeper into the thicket, branches tearing at their clothes, the forest closing in around them. Heart pounding, Lila broke through another cluster of trees, stumbling, but never slowing. Behind them, the wolves loped forward, their growls mingling with Carl's furious shouts, echoing as he urged his men to find them. Not far. We have to find cover. Lila shouted, desperation fueling her speed. They lurched through the underbrush, breathless, adrenaline pumping. Fear powered them forward, but the icy grip of survival twisted in her chest. Hope felt more fragile than ever, it could be snuffed out by a single misstep. The wolves were gaining on them, feet pattering against the forest floor, a symphony of claws striking the earth. Lila risked a glance back, her heart sinking. They were too close. The slightest miscalculation could seal their fate. Over there. Lila pointed to a dense thicket just ahead, an opening that beckoned. We can hide. Maisie nodded, fear in her eyes but trust in her sister stronger than the terror they faced. They dove into the thicket, the branches encasing them like a cocoon. It was dark, the earth cold and damp beneath them, but they nestled into the foliage, hoping to become invisible. A heartbeat later, the wolves burst into the clearing, their eyes hunting, snouts lifted as they caught the scent. They stopped, heads cocked, scanning the area. Lila held her breath, the world narrowing to the quiet thump of her heart and Maisie's shaky breaths beside her. Then, the howls rang out again, a wretched discord that shook Lila to her core. Did they see us? Maisie whispered, trembling. No, not yet. Lila's voice came out strained. She fought the rising panic, every muscle coiled tight, every nerve singing with fear. But she couldn't give voice to her doubts, she had to project strength. They had to survive. Footsteps pattered closer, distinct and purposeful, as Carl's men swept through the trees, relentless and furious. Where are they? One of them barked. They can't have gone far. Tension mounted like an electric charge. The wolves, restless, resumed their prowling motions, weaving in and out of the trees, as if they could sense the hunt. Lila's heart raced, each thud echoing the relentless ticking of time. They needed an escape path, something to fight back against fate. Then, just as hope began to dim, a sudden explosion of noise erupted from the chaos. A loud crack boomed, and a tree fell nearby, reverberating like a gunshot through the woods. Lila's heart dropped. What was that? She gasped, her grip tightening on Maisie's sleeve. Maybe it's Maisie began, but a loud snarl cut through her, and they both jumped. Go! Lila yelled, propelled by the surge of desperation that coursed through her. She clenched her teeth, pulling Maisie to her feet. The path was chaotic, twisted, but it was now or never. As they slipped out from their hiding spot, the wolves' red eyes bore down on them, and a simultaneous roar of Carl's men echoed behind. They had to reach the cliff edge just past the trees, the only hope of escaping this moment of fate, but would they find it? Before they fell into an even worse trap, together, they sprinted into the unknown, the world spinning wildly around them, every heartbeat an invitation to survive or die. But just then, a figure emerged from the shadows. A dark, imposing silhouette stepped into their path, blocking the way. Lila's breath hitched. Was this the end? Who goes there? The voice growled low, firm, but eerily calm. In an instant, their fate hung on the precipice of another dangerous encounter. What now? Would they fight, or could this unknown figure become a dark ally in their quest for survival? Lila's heart thundered in her chest as she stared up at the hulking figure blocking their path. Please, we need help. She cried, the words spilling out desperate and raw. The figure's features emerged from the shadows, a face worn with lines of hardship, but eyes that sparkled with a fierce intensity. It was the mountain man, now a towering guardian against the chaos of their nightmarish reality. Get back! He growled, eyes scanning the surroundings. He was a tempest against the backdrop of the forest, fierce yet strangely comforting. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, spear held high, ready to defend Lila and Maisie from the oncoming storm. Run! Don't look back! His voice rang through the darkness as he turned toward the threatening sounds creeping closer. The crack of branches and the low growls of the wolves sent shivers cascading down Lila's spine. With a nod from Lila, they tore past him into the steep incline ahead, adrenaline fueling their frantic dash. They stumbled, hearts pounding in synchronized fear, weaving through the low-hanging branches that clawed at their clothes, pulling them back toward the hunt. Behind them, the mountain man roared, the very sound and echo of fury mixed with the somber reality of the woods. Lila's breaths burned her lungs as she pressed forward. Maisie, keep moving. Every step felt like a battle against their own fear, against the predatory sounds drawing ever closer. They reached the cliff's edge, a steep precipice that seemed to drop into darkness. The night held secrets, waiting to swallow them whole. But the menace behind them pushed them forward. Lila turned, seeing glimpses of the wolves, their eyes glinting like shards of glass in the shadows of the forest, and the figures of Carl's men crashing through the underbrush. The mountain man loomed beside them, fierce and unyielding, his massive presence a blanket of protection forged by the heat of the moment. Jump! He shouted, drawing the attackers' focus toward him. The moment felt electric as Lila and Maisie exchanged a glance filled with understanding. They had to trust him now. In a breathless rush, Lila took Maisie's hand, and without another thought, they leaped forward. The world fell away for a heartbeat, as they sailed through the air, suspended between fate and freedom. The cold air whipped against their skin, and with a hard thud, they landed in a thick bed of fallen leaves, a muffled oof escaping as they crumpled onto the ground, choking on fears unspoken. Lila scrambled to her feet, heart pounding, fighting the urge to look back at the cliff where the mountain man stood. We have to keep moving. She forced out, ripping her gaze away. They stumbled onward into the shadows of the forest, lungs burning with exertion, but behind them, chaos erupted once more, a cacophony of growls, the clash of metal and sharp cries that twisted the air into a lurking horror. The girls nimbly weaved through thick trees, desperate to distance themselves from the fight. A part of Lila wanted nothing more than to stop and go back, to aid the mountain man battling the odds for their sake. But she had to keep her sister safe, to protect what was left of their family. Finally, they found a small cave, branches converging overhead to hide their escape, and crawled inside, hearts racing like wild horses. Lila pressed her back against the cold stone, breathing unevenly. "We're safe for now," she whispered, trying to catch her breath. Maisie trembled beside her, shaking off fear like water droplets. "What if he doesn't make it?" she said, voice breaking. "That's not going to happen," Lila declared, fierceness flickering back in her chest. "He fought for us." The room fell into silence, both girls burying their faces in each other's arms, holding tight to the one piece of solace left in the chaos. Moments stretched into eternity until the distant sounds of struggle faded. The fear palpable and thick, Lila slowly pulled back, meeting Maisie's eyes, both of them holding on to an anchor of resolve. They weren't alone anymore, no more shadows creeping over their lives. They faced the worst, and now they had to regroup and face the truth. As the dim light flickered into the cave, a movement drew their attention. Their hearts raced as a familiar figure emerged from the shadows, battered but alive. The mountain man had found them. Relief flooded through Lila as strength coiled back in her limbs. "You're here," she breathed, embracing him like an anchor. "Yes," he said, his voice rasping but steady. "We need to leave the woods before they realize where we are." With that, the three of them emerged together into the dim light, ready to face whatever came next. Lila felt a newfound sense of purpose, every step echoing with the promise of freedom. They would not be pawns any longer. They would shape their own fate, together. As they slipped through the trees, strength renewed, Lila turned to the mountains. They were wild and rugged, but now they felt like home, the embrace of the chaos replaced with a whisper of hope. But their journey was just beginning. Now, we need your support more than ever. You need to subscribe now to catch future exclusive stories like this one. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm, making sure others find this tale. Please, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories on what's next for Lila and her family. Your thoughts matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.